Hey folks, I know I'm just an old guy telling stories, but before we dive in, do me a solid, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and let's enjoy today's stories together. Now, before we get started, I've got a quick disclaimer. The content presented in this video is purely for entertainment purposes only. Theories and stories discussed here are speculative and not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. So, sit back, relax, and let's get into it with the horrible Latka. To be perfectly honest, I was never a fan of all that dark web stuff. I mean, it's interesting enough and all, but I never had the patience, nor technological know-how to figure out how to use it productively. In fact, my whole family seems to be missing the technology genes. We've struggled with everything from computers and phones, to toasters and microwaves. My mother even got scammed a few times before she passed away. Luckily, she never lost anything more than a few $100s, but it still stung. Francis, my best friend, on the hand, was a tech whiz. He loved that stuff, and never shied away from looking up the most bizarre and horrific things online. If he could reach it, he would. He even tried to set up a Tor browser on my computer once, but I just ended up ignoring it, somehow deleting the shortcut and losing track of where he placed it. Still, he'd periodically send me pictures from Alphabi, which is apparently some dark web black market. It was mostly strange or illegal products. Other times he'd find impossible, random conspiracies. It was usually weird and funny stuff. But sometimes he'd send me darker things. Pictures of murder victims, videos displaying horrific car crashes and other accidents. It made me appreciate our friendship a little less, but Francis was all around a good guy, albeit an eccentric one. We stuck together. On the rare occasion that he crossed the line, I'd just politely ask him to stop, which would work for a while. Then, after the shock had worn off, he'd send more stuff he found on the dark web. It would always start off so innocent, with funny pictures or forums, but it inevitably got darker, escalating to more disturbing areas of the dark web. The most horrific thing he ever sent me, however, was little more than a picture of myself, found randomly out there in the sea of onion sites. It was just a screenshot he'd sent, with a picture of myself and some text lined up next to it. In a way, it looked like a profile for some sort of social media page, but it was plain, simple, and seemingly pointless. Contained my name, birth date, address. Everything. I'm so sorry, Tyler. I don't know how they found you. Francis sent me as a message. What do you mean? Who are they? What's going on? I asked back in a flood of questions. Did you open any suspicious emails? Or sign up for something weird online? I tried to think back. I couldn't remember anything that stood out, but in my business I dealt with hundreds of mails each day from various clients. I don't know. Francis, what's going on? Your name is on ALICIA, listed as a participant. What the hell is Alicia? A red room, it was supposed to be closed down, but it's back. I chuckled at his remark. I wasn't much of a tech genius, but even I knew red rooms were little more than myths told to scare teenagers and gullible adults. Come on man, this is a joke, right? Red rooms aren't real. I think this one is. After that, I'd reached the maximum amount of Francis antics that I could handle. I told him to back off and leave me alone for a bit, which had become somewhat of a routine between the two of us. Still, I took his warning serious enough to dial the non-emergency line to the police. I explained the situation, but they didn't take it seriously. After all, my personal information leaked on a website shouldn't have been much of a threat. They just told me to call back if anything more substantial happened. I went about my week and nothing came of the mysterious website. Francis even admitted he might have overreacted a tad. Truth is, most people have their email information leaked somewhere online. Even passwords and personal details are readily available all over the place. But for most people, that's just useless information. Then about a month later, I received a letter in my mail. It didn't have a return address, nor any stamps. It was just a plain envelope put in my mailbox. The only way I could have received it would be if someone had personally delivered it themselves. I opened the letter to find a perfectly black paper inside, with little more than a single line of text in the middle. It was just a string of random numbers and letters, ending in .onion to mark the fact that it was a dark web page. At first I didn't even connect the dots. I had long since forgotten the fact that all my personal details had been leaked. Instead of just throwing it away as I should have, I decided to contact Francis. He was more intrigued than worried, showing up about 15 minutes later to help me connect to the website. He only needed about a second to dig up the Tor browser and input the onion link I'd received. Shit, he mumbled as the title of the site popped up. It was ALICIA. That's the site that has my name? I asked to be sure. Francis nodded. A few seconds passed as the site loaded, before a black video player popped up in the center of the screen. It didn't have a timer or anything to let us know the duration of the video. Instead, it just had a play button. Francis clicked it, and though it was too dark to see what was going on, I could hear something in the background. "Turn up the volume," I said. Francis did as commanded, and we were greeted with the muffled sounds of someone struggling. It was quiet, just loud enough to make out what was going on without understanding the hidden context. Then it got brighter, just enough to make out the walls and ceiling of a small room. In the center lay a man tied to a bed with chains, his face obscured by a bag pulled over his head. "What the hell is this?" I asked. It's a red room." "Well, turn that shit off." Francis was reluctant to oblige, whether it be due to curiosity or shock. Before I could reach out and turn it off myself, a man entered the picture. He was naked, with his bare chest covered in old scars and fresh blood. He pulled the mask off the tied-up man, and I let out a loud gasp. "What is it?" Francis said. I pointed a trembling finger towards the screen. That's Mr. Dawson. My boss." "You sure?" I nodded. "Is this a live stream or something?" "No, I don't think so. As far as I know, you can't live stream on the dark web. It has to be a recording." I wanted so desperately to just turn it off and call the police, but we were both frozen in our seats. The naked man pulled out a knife from a bag on the ground and started peeling off pieces of skin from Dawson's leg. He tried to scream in agony, but he was gagged, left unable to move or even call for help. Little by little, the man cut off pieces of flesh from Dawson, moving his way from the legs to the torso. I can't say exactly how long the video went on for. It skipped minutes at the time, showing Dawson at progressively more mutilated stages of the torture. It wasn't until his skin had been almost completely removed before he finally lost consciousness. I threw up, finally snapping back to reality as the screen turned black. Francis sat speechless in his chair, but what could we do? Dawson had to have been dead by the time we even opened the link. Naturally, I called the police and gave them all the information about the website that I had. But by the time the police got around to checking it out, the video was gone. Once it had been viewed, it was simply removed. They believed us though, saying that they'd forward the information to the appropriate sources, which turned out to be the FBI. There was little more I could do. Without solid evidence that my boss had actually died, he was just reported missing while the investigation went on. I was questioned by various officers and an FBI agent a couple of times, but that was about it. A year passed and life went on. My place of work just hired a new manager, and Dawson's disappearance remained an unsolved mystery. I fully believed that would be the end of it. I thought the horrors I'd witnessed would be a one-time occurrence, that I would be fine. During that time, I also drifted away from Francis. We weren't even able to look each other in the eyes anymore, not after what we'd seen together. Then everything changed as I got another letter in the mail. It was unmarked without an address, just like before. That time, however, I didn't hesitate to call the police. I already knew what would be inside, and I wasn't about to ruin another piece of evidence. The police redirected me to the responsible FBI agent who was working the case. He was quick to act, coming to pick me up within the hour alongside 3 armed agents. "Mr. Larkin. I'm Agent Vance, we need to come with us," he said before they rushed me inside the car as if my life depended on it. They took me to an office building in the middle of the city, and made me wait in an interrogation room while they checked out the evidence. I sat there with a cup of water, 100 thoughts running through my mind. An hour passed before Agent Vance came to check up on me. He looked upset but had put on a brave face to talk to me. "We checked out the link in your envelope and found a video like the one you described last time. We've taken some still shots of the footage, and I'd like it if you could help identify the victim." I shuddered at the thought, but agreed to help. Vance guided me into a room full of computers. A group of office workers sat in front of one, staring at a picture, trying to figure out who the person was. They didn't need to analyze it any further because I knew exactly who it was. Francis. He looked absolutely horrified, the still picture showing him clearly alive. But for how long that would last, I didn't know. "Is he?" I began to ask. "He didn't survive." "I'm sorry," Vance interjected, knowing what I wanted to ask. How did he die? It's better you don't know the details. But we're going to catch this guy, I promise you that much. Again, we went over each and every detail. They promised over and over they'd do everything in their power to chase down the people doing it, and to keep me safe. But as weeks turned to months, no culprit was caught. Eventually I stopped working. Instead, I just hid at home, afraid that anyone remotely close to me might be next. I didn't have much in terms of family. No siblings, and my parents had long since died. I suppose that made me an easy target for the runners of the Red Room. Despite the FBI's best efforts, the letters kept coming with random intervals. My ex-girlfriend was the next victim. Though we'd broken up a few years earlier, we'd remained friendly. Again, I got the link to a video of her brutal murder. I just forwarded it to the FBI, unable to stomach another horror show. Then they took one of my old co-workers. One by one, they killed the people I knew and loved, and I could do nothing to stop it. I couldn't even contact the culprits and ask what the hell they wanted from me. But then it hit me, I was being tortured, and while it wasn't physical like the others, it was still mental torture. Like the horrors they'd committed on my friends, the pain wouldn't end until I was dead. Maybe that's what they so desperately wanted, for me to kill myself. Maybe it was some sort of sick game to see how long I could last. I sat down in front of my computer, ready to give up. If there was even the slightest chance that it would save lives, I had to do it. I looked up the best ways to do it, but in the end, I decided to go for the gun. I picked it up, pressed it against my temple. I felt like hours passed, but I just couldn't bring myself to pull the trigger without letting every possible scenario run through my mind. Then the phone rang and I almost dropped the gun in shock. I glanced at my phone to see a call incoming from an unknown number. "Hello?" I asked as I picked it up. "Not like that," a twisted robotic voice said from the other end. "Not like what? Who are you?" "You need to record it properly," the voice continued. Whoever they were using some kind of voice-changing software to make them unrecognizable. "How did you?" I began before noticing the camera on my computer. Of course they'd been watching. I didn't even need to ask. I just stared at the camera, and the mysterious person on the other end confirmed. "That's right. We've been watching you." I felt my heart drop. "So all I have to do is to kill myself, and the suffering ends?" "Yes. Face the camera when you do it. You have 15 minutes, or the next person will be taken. I don't have any other options. I can't let anyone else die because of me. I just pray that once I'm gone, it'll finally stop." I had always been aware of the deep web. You hear the craziest, most fucked up stories from people who have the balls to explore it. Websites that involve human experimentation, hiring a hitman, and even watching people through their own security cameras. It's fucked up. But honestly, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't just slightly interested. Now, just to point out, there was no malicious intent behind my exploration of the deep web. I was just curious to see if it really was as bad as people said it was. The first thing I stumbled upon was a website extremely centered around death, which gave me a really uneasy feeling, so I didn't hang around that webpage very long. It takes quite a bit to freak me out, so it's safe to say I was a little surprised that I couldn't even stomach the first website I clicked on. But hey, it's not supposed to be all unicorns and rainbows, right? Next, I clicked a website that was dedicated to watching people through security cameras. Most of the screens showed empty living rooms and patios. Some of them showed oddly filled rooms, like rooms that were packed with stuffed animals, and another that was eerily decorated with fucking Christmas lights and fake Santa Claus statues. Another screen showed a young woman doing yoga. That one had a lot of views. I didn't watch that one very long. Something inside me felt ill and just wrong. Like what I was doing was sickening. I shook my head, blinking away any more curiosity before I hovered my mouse over the tiny X to close the window. Right before I pressed the mouse, I saw a blue link under a black screen that said, "Proceed with caution." I bit down on my back teeth, yelling internally to leave the page. "Don't click the link, it's not worth it." It could be murder. Would that make me an accomplice? What if it was someone skinning an animal or some shit like that? But then again, what if it wasn't? I don't know what the hell propelled me to move my mouse away from the window, hovering it over the link instead, but that's where I ended up. My curiosity always got the best of me, and no matter how twisted my stomach felt, or how strong the feeling of dread was that lingered right over my head, I had to know. I really just had to know what the link led to, or I would go crazy until I finally figured it out. So, I pressed my mouse down and watched the link turn purple, felt my mouth go dry, and watched as the screen slowly loaded. The page was just comprised of a large screen like the security camera page, only it was just one. The room was concrete, it was dark. There must have been a night vision camera or something because everything had a weird blue-green tinge, but you could tell there was little to no light. There was a dark liquid on the floor in a medium-sized puddle. I told myself it was gasoline, don't ask me why. Movement in the far right of the screen caught my attention, and I immediately perked in my desk chair, inching my face closer to the screen of my laptop. It looked like an arm, like someone's forearm. They were standing there, not really moving but subtly swaying, just enough to not look completely still. "Hey," I said before shaking my head and slapping my mouth shut. "Stupid." Then the person they walked over towards the left of the screen. I felt my stomach knot, felt my throat tingle and tighten while rising in the back of my throat. I knew my mouth was open, gaping, and my eyes were wide, face screwed up into an expression of pure disgust. It was a young woman, she looked like she couldn't be older than 25 or so. Long, dark and dirty hair was in tangles, like she'd been pulling at it. Her leg was dragging, her other skinny leg doing most of the work as she limped weakly. Her head was down, looking at the floor, and the sound of her dragging her foot across the concrete echoed in my silent room. I didn't think it could get any worse. I was so fucking wrong. Suddenly, the woman raised her head, and it looked like it weighed a ton on her tiny body. I hadn't noticed it before, only able to barely make out her side profile, but now it was clear as day. She looked around, eyes watering with tears and black makeup streaming down her face. Small strands of bloody thread were intertwined in her lips, messily tied, locking them together. Dark blood stained her chin, probably from where she tried desperately to open her mouth, to scream before realizing she couldn't. Her dainty fingers were stained as well, the same color as the puddle on the concrete. My whole body felt weak. My stomach was sick. I tried to tell myself it was fake, that it was all a big hoax. My eyes scanned to the bottom left of the screen. 5,623. 5,623 people were watching. Unable to fight it any longer, I ran straight into the bathroom, puking my insides into the toilet bowl. Everything in me felt disgusting. Wrong. Twisted. Once I was finally done, I laid on the floor of the bathroom, letting the cool tiles try to soothe my burning body. My head was spinning. I kept repeating to myself over and over in my head that I shouldn't have clicked the link, I should have left, I should have closed the fucking window and told my inner curiosity to go fuck itself. Instead, I was laying on the floor, the bathroom reeking of vomit, and my mind a complete mess over that the hell I was supposed to do. Should I get the link and send it to the police? Should I call them now? My first instinct was to copy and paste the link, just in case, then call the police and inform them of what was happening. Maybe they could trace the IP address or something. Maybe they would recognize the girl and know where to start looking. Maybe I could save her life. I'd feel really fucking dumb if this was all fake just to get viewers, but I wasn't about to gamble. Not with what was at stake. I ignored the dizzy feeling flooding my head as I jumped up, grabbing the doorknob and twisting it a bit too harshly. When I flung the door open, my phone buzzed in my pocket, scaring the living shit out of me. I stopped mid-panic and picked it up with shaky hands. I saw my girlfriend's name and immediately slid to answer. My voice was a complete wreck, my eyes finding the screen where the girl shrunk down to the ground, the sound of her cries bouncing around the room, making my body feel rigid. I had nothing left to throw up, but I still felt so sick. "Madeline, you're not going to believe what I just fucking saw." "What? Are you okay? Have you been crying?" "No, I'm not okay," I answered, averting my eyes from the screen. "I know you said to stay away from the deep web, but dash. Are you kidding me?" Her voice went from caring to mad in a split second. "I told you to stay away from that place, you never listen to me, you never fucking do." "There's a girl," I said weakly, "she's trapped in some basement or something, her mouth is like sewn shut, there's blood all over her face and hands, I don't know what to do, Madeline." The woman's cries got louder, more desperate, but muffled. "I'm so sorry. Close it out, clear your history and never go back there again." "I'm not kidding. But should I call Dash?" "No." Her voice was stern now. "You don't know if it's bullshit. It's probably staged to gain disgusting viewers, apparently like yourself. People do it all the time, that's why I said it'd be best if you just stayed away from there. You could get yourself into a lot of trouble." I didn't say anything, wordlessly walking over to the desk. My hands shook as I raised my mouse to the small X once more. My eyes watched the number of viewers slowly tick higher and higher before I closed the window. I felt even worse than before. Okay. We can file a report tomorrow just in case, but for now go to sleep and stay the fuck away. I can't believe you even went there in the first place. I didn't have the energy to argue with her. Guilt plagued my whole body, drowning me. It was all I could feel. I told her good night, that I was sorry and that I loved her before I hung up and made my way to the couch to sleep. Or try to sleep. It didn't feel right even being in my bedroom or being anywhere near my computer. Not while that girl was still trapped, unable to scream for help, unable to talk at all. I know it could be fake, but was that really a risk I was willing to take? I looked up some Google searches over what was fake on the deep web, and read multiple stories about staged webcam videos, which made me feel a little bit better. It didn't make the sick, guilty feeling go away though. It's safe to say that I didn't get much sleep. Every time I closed my eyes or even began to drift off, I would see the woman's face, the thread laced into her lips, the blood staining her mouth, her fingers, the floor. I continued to grow more and more anxious and uneasy, deciding that maybe getting out of the house, heading over to the local CVS and picking up some melatonin might help. I threw my blanket off, slid on my shoes and grabbed my keys and wallet from the nightstand. The cool air felt amazing and did wonders to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in my head. I went to check the time, realizing I'd left my phone at home. Not a huge deal, the store was only a few minutes away from my house. I ended up buying melatonin and a stronger sleeping pill just in case those didn't work. I also got a pack of bottled water to help rehydrate after I vomited up all the contents in my stomach earlier. By the time I got home, I felt much better. Which lasted about 3 seconds before I noticed that my front door was wide open. Now, I may have been in a state of shock and panic, but I never ever leave my front door open or even unlocked. My heart immediately began to race. I got out of my car, closing the door quietly and unlocking my trunk, grabbing the crowbar that I keep in there. Who's there? I yelled into the house, waiting for any noise. Who is in there? My own voice was shaking and weak. I was met with complete silence. Keeping the crowbar up and ready to strike, I walked to the couch and felt for my phone. As soon as I found it, I hit the emergency button and waited until I got a hold of a 911 operator, letting her know that I think my house was just broken into. She told me police would be on their way. After checking around the house for anything odd, I decided to give my girlfriend a call, letting her know what had happened. The phone rang and then rang some more. After getting her voicemail, I hung up, knowing she'd probably be asleep this late at night. I waited about 20 or so minutes for the police to show up, and walked around with them like a scared puppy as they checked every room. They ended up just having me fill out a report telling me they'll keep patrol cars in the area just in case anyone else gets hit. As they were leaving, I checked to see if Madeline had called back yet, but there wasn't any missed calls. I, however, did notice several outgoing calls to her cell phone. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:12 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:14 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:17 a.m. Outgoing call to Madeline, 3:20 a.m. And then another one at 3:56, which was around the time I'd gotten home. My mind went into an automatic panic, knowing for a fact that I did not make those calls. I quickly checked my texts, reading one I'd apparently sent out at 3:23 a.m. Hey, can't sleep. Gonna come over, mind leaving the back door unlocked so I can get in? I didn't send that message. My stomach dropped, my heart thudded loudly in my chest as I noticed her reply directly underneath. Sorry I was sleeping. Thanks for waking me up, by the way. Lose your key again? It's unlocked, don't be too late. Without a second thought, I jumped up, running to lock all the doors and windows in my house, keeping the crowbar tight in my hand as I ran to my car. I drove as fast as my little Civic would allow all the way to her house, ignoring any stoplights. It only took me 3 minutes to get there, but I still knew it'd be too late. I made my way to her back door, feeling every cell in my body burn when I saw it was wide open. My face was hot, my hands were shaking, but I stepped in, crowbar raised like a bat, ready to swing. I tried to keep my emotions at bay as I looked around her dark house. Madeline? I called out, "Are you okay, babe?" Nothing. Silence. Madeline? A small scream came from her bedroom just up the stairs. My legs jerked to a run as I flew up the stairs, slamming her door open. I looked at her empty bed, her empty room. Confused, I heard the scream again. Only this time, I heard that it was coming through her computer monitor. I felt numb as I looked at the screen, noticing the same website I saw earlier, only instead of one woman I saw two. The first was lying on the floor, not moving, in that puddle of dark liquid. I recognized the second girl just as I had recognized her voice. My heart shattered as I saw her face, streaked in blood. The same threading was sewn into her eyelids, locking them shut. Her scream hit my bones, surrounded my body. It was all I could hear. Her face was twisted in pure terror. I cried pathetically as her voice began to go out, continuing to grow weaker and rasped. I locked my jaw, picking up my cell and dialing 911 for the second time. Only this time it barely rang once before the deep, gravelly voice of another man answered. "You should not have called." Chills shot down my body, and I heard the phone thud as it hit the carpeted floor. My breath hitched in my throat as I bent to pick it up, hanging up the call and racing down the stairs. How did he do that? How did he redirect my call away from the police? I felt my heart race as I darted out of her back door, in a frenzy as I sprinted to the closest house. I pounded the door, screaming at the top of my lungs until the neighbor opened it, her face tired, confused and scared. She let me in and I explained through frantic tears what happened. I'm typing this on my phone to post as we both try to get a hold of the cops, but neither of our calls are going through and neither is her landline. I think someone is messing with our cellular signal, and they may have cut her line, but we're going to keep trying. I'm scared for me, I'm scared for my girlfriend, and I'm scared for my neighbor. I don't know what's going to happen to me. If you don't hear from me again, please take this advice and this experience to heart. Stay away from the deep web. For fuck's sake, please stay away from the deep web. Alright folks, that's it for today's stories. I hope you enjoyed the ride, even if it left you with a few chills down your spine. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to The Horrible Latka for more creepy tales. Got any crazy stories of your own? Drop them in the comments and who knows, maybe I'll be sharing them next time. Until then, stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll catch you in the next one.